on the Adventist Church and racism.
All right, so I'd probably preface this by saying that as a West Indian, as a Jamaican, but having had the opportunity to understand the culture outside of America or outside of North America, and also understand and assimilate into North American culture, my perspective just completely changed, just completely expanded. Racism and racial discrimination and prejudice is much alive and is ingrained in not just North American culture, not just in America or in Canada, but it affects the entire world. We live in a racialized world, right? So that's the reason why our music departments, for example, all across the world will be white, European, Anglo-Saxon in their culture and what we understand theologically to be good music.
Right.
That's why we don't teach jazz in our schools, right? That's why we don't delve into popular music or not even really gospel music in our schools, right?
Right.
That's kind of taboo officially. You may sing, even the university choir, any university, any Adventist college or university may sing one or two gospel songs, but you're not gonna get any music history courses, the history of gospel music, right? Because that's Black.
Right.
So at our core, as an institution, the church, Adventism kind of reflects the type of racism that's in the world. We haven't been really much different from the world as it relates to that. As a matter of fact, secular schools are much further ahead of us as it relates to inclusion and diversity in curriculum and in practice in the Adventist in education, right? So yeah, we are definitely very much affected by racism and discrimination and prejudice in Adventism.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think we can do from leadership level or even on the ground level? What can be done to help fix this problem?
Raise our voice, be very vocal and bold and courageous about it. For example, when I was at Andrews, for example, I was in my music history class and my white professor is going through the entire timeline of music history. He gets to Black music, he literally skips over it and continues. Because, in his mind, we don't teach that here, right? So now is a responsibility of us as Black students to protest, right? To raise hell. Because it's unethical, it's immoral, and you're also shortchanging my education, right? Yeah, it's so you just have to be very bold, and very courageous about it. Upset the system, upset the status quo. It's uncomfortable for you to do at first, but as you do it more and more, you'll find your own voice. And we have to be comfortable being an irritant, being an agitator.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny you spoke about that because I watched a video not too long
I'm
ago.
sorry, just one more thing. And also, don't try to gentrify. Don't try to make what you do that's Black white. Right? So for example, when I was at Andrews, I had the opportunity to lead Deliverance Mass Choir. Deliverance Mass Choir it's not just a choir. It's like one of the Black institutions on campus. And we're always kind of told to kind of soften what we do. Don't bring the trap set to certain places. Don't, kind of limit what we do.
Yeah.
Like we are to limit ourselves
Right.
when we're in white spaces.
Can't be too
I
black.
said, you can't be too black. Like, no, I'm not bringing the trap set. We do spirituals, yes, but we do gospel music, and I'm not going to try to stifle that to appease any white audience. That's an insult to us, to who we are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, you just be very bold.
Yeah, that's true. Like a lot of time we're conditioned to, like, when we're amongst white people, we have to kind of limit ourselves to kind of fit in. It's like, why? And as I was saying earlier, globally, music theory means classical music theory. And that's not the only music theory that there is. Gospel music has theory in it. Like reggae music has theory in it. When we say music theory, we think about classical music theory of the 18th century, Baroque period, classical period, romantic period. But that's just one aspect of music theory. But it comes back to the whole aspect of white normalcy, where like that is what it is, and then everything else is kind of a sub thing.
Everything else is a novelty,
Right.
And yeah, so even so outside of it's interesting that you said it, like that you were saying music theory is limited to like what is Western European, right? But I never even thought of that before. Everything, there is theory of reggae music, right?
Absolutely.
The 1 and the 3, the 2 and the 4.
Absolutely.
Right?
It has its form. It has
exactly. It has its form and structure. Jazz music has its turns, its chords, right?
Absolutely.
And so does gospel music. Of course, a lot of gospel has a lot of jazz in it, But yeah, we've always been, and I think it's important for the black musician who is trained in, here's what I always found, that black musician who is trained in Western European culture or Western European music, right? Thinks he's or she is elite as compared to the untrained. Right? That culture has to stop, because and I got that in college too, our professors, oh no, this is
I'll say, you said the untrained, but they are trained. It's just that their method of training is different.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our professors will kind of make it seem like what you do at Shahai, what you do in the school choir, the student-led choir or student-led organization is subpar, substandard to what you do officially from the music department, right? That culture has to stop.
All right, so I'll say this, and you can give me your thoughts. There is an element of that's truth to it, but it's not because of the style of music. So I believe somebody that's trained, and as I said, there are different ways of being trained. But I believe that we should reward persons that are trained. We should reward the professionals in their area. The issue is, if I'm a jazz musician and I've studied jazz, so whatever the method is, whether it's listening to a bunch of Art Tatum and copying, that's a form of training. If I'm a reggae musician and I've been in the studios working with these reggae legends, that's training, right? So if you're trained in whatever era, you're a professional, and if you're a professional, you're equal. So I believe that, because sometimes you will have subpar persons that they just ping pong, maybe better than ping pong, but what they do isn't at the same level of training as somebody that may have gone to school or any of these other methods. And so I think that distinction is necessary. But a lot of the time, it's if I'm classically trained, I'm superior to any other.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm trying to communicate.
Right.
Yeah. I'm with you there.
Yeah. So yeah, and the other thing is, they always talk about worldly, and the Black music is always the worldly music, right? So because here's the thing, a lot of so me and you are from Jamaica. In Jamaica, a lot of our experience with, say, reggae is used in a secular setting. And so people just automatically associate reggae with worldly. And then a lot of time, their only association with classical is, when the choir comes in the church or whatever. So they think classical is sacred.
Sacred.
Right. And if they were to grow up in a different part or a different time, different part of the world, classical is used so much more in the world than reggae ever was. Like, it's where people are from, and their experience shapes what they believe is sacred and what they believe is secular. And it all does come back down to white supremacy and white normalcy and white holiness, that kind of thing.
I'm just recalling somewhere in a music history class, I learned, don't quote me on this, I think it was Beethoven that who could have been Black, right? That he moved from Vienna to another city, and when he got there, they were doing waltz, right? Or maybe it was Mozart, I don't remember. Anyway, his commentary was, he was writing a letter back home, and he was saying, wow, these people are so worldly. You should see them dancing on the 3-beat. They're doing this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, if you bring, and of course, Handel was a drunk, right? But when you bring this music into church, and we hear this music at church, it's considered sacred, right?
Right.
The organ that was used in pubs and bars, right? When we bring this music in, and over time, it's been normalized and it's now considered sacred and holy. But really, if you look back to those jigs and ballads and even Martin Luther says he used so many popular tunes of the time,
right?
Put religious text to it, use them as hymns. They're hymns in our hymnal, right? But they weren't originally, those tunes weren't originally sacred music.
Right.
No, those were secular tunes.
Right.
They weren't talking about Jesus. They weren't talking about God.
Right.
So yeah, it just shows how white brainwashed we've been to accept white culture as what's sacred, what's holy, what's okay.
And when they sing the hymns, whether they say amen at the end, because it blessed them, right? Despite the origin, it blessed them. So they, a lot of time they speak about, what was used secularly can never be used for, and I don't believe that at all.
The Bible doesn't teach that. The Bible certainly doesn't teach that. Because look how many figures in the Bible, their lives were turned around, right? They were completely against Paul, for example, were completely against the people of God. His life was completely turned around. It's the same person that God uses for his glory and for his honor. And I think he does that even with music,
Right.
He can take a secular tune and you could put religious text on it and he can use it for his glory. It's not our job to determine whether or not God can use it or not.
Right. And Paul himself quoted from pagan prophets, right? He used the pagan prophets and quoted from them to do God's work. And when there was the temple to the unknown God, he used that to speak about God. And it's funny, something similar is why I started this very podcast, because just last Easter, just a couple of weeks ago, so one of the Sunday churches that I play for, they had a Good Friday program, right? And so I went there to play. And that program was such a blessing to me because they spoke about the 7 last words of Jesus, and they had 7 different speakers. And it was such a blessing to me, right? It really like refocused my relationship with God. And then I go home, I go on Facebook, and I see people burning out Easter because it has pagan origins, right? Burn out Easter. And I'm saying, but these people use Easter to lift up Jesus. And it was a blessing for me personally. So how are we going to say we can't use Easter to lift up Jesus? That just doesn't make sense to me.
God can repurpose anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything. And Ellen G. White herself says Christmas is not a time to be ignored. You know, we can use Christmas to spread the gospel. So God will use whatever and whoever and whatever season or whatever to lift up himself and to bring people to him.
Absolutely. I don't think I even need to say anything more. And that's it.
All right. So here's another hot topic. Women in the church, female ordination, women elders, women pastors. And so I want to set up my view, which isn't fully formed yet, and then I want you to respond to it. All right. So over the years, I used to